And we are now live on YouTube. Hello there, wizards. We are really lucky today that I've actually got a piece of software that works, and we are joined from both sides of the pond. You've got Jenny, very familiar to many of you throughout the UK training process, and my brother in arms, Ducky McDonald. I met Ducky on the line of the Warrior Games 2018. To say the pair of us were nervous when we started shooting would be an understatement, but within about 3 ends, we weren't shooting for ourselves, we were shooting for each other. And the poor bugger even has been to this yacht and spent Christmas on this yacht with his wife and son. So here I am locked in the marina. You'll wait till you see the size of Ducky's so-called shed. That's no shed, it's a bloody aircraft hangar.
It's a 3-car garage.
3-car, well, okay, mate. Yeah, 2-car garage over here is a bloody enormous one, and you'd only be able to park 2 minis in it. What we'll do is we'll start off with Jenny to start off with. Jenny, give us an intro to number 1. Why would you want to make your own strings? And 2, is it really something the Wizards could get into?
I think from my perspective, the reason why I often make my own strings is so that I can just change things, and I know what's gone into the string. Certainly the commercial ones you buy now are much better than when I started shooting nearly 30 years ago, and it's just so that you know what's gone into it, and you can go, actually, I want to try a string that's a little bit longer with some more twists, or I want to have more strands, or I want to have less strands, I want longer serving, or someone suggested this type of string making kit. It's just so that you've got flexibility, and certainly if you can tie a knot, you can make a string. I think so, and it's like a lot of archery. It's quite mindful. It's just nice being able to go, I made this string and I'm shooting my bow with it, and I really enjoy it. I really like it.
And if we can ask, now, Ducky, you've made your own strings for a short period of time, but you've ended up making your own jig for making strings, haven't you?
Right. So I got introduced to making strings through my coach. He's been shooting since he was 12 years old. He's currently 32, and he shot competitively across the United States, has many state championships and a couple national titles. And he basically told me flat out, he said, the strings that you buy on the market nowadays they're rubbish. You want to know how your strands are, how the strength and intensity of your string, and you'll understand if you make a really good string, because the flexibility in it will stabilize after a couple hundred arrows, and it will not flex in that zone on your plunger, your good end and your bad end for opening up your shot group. When you're making your own strings, I've only ever shot with my strings, so I'm fortunate enough to have that experience. I've never had to shoot a purchase string.
So now we've all put strings on our recurve bows, and normally they're already attached onto your compound and what have you. Now we all know about the various loops. The big loop goes on the top, the small loop and what have you. We know about the serving in the center. Jenny, take us through the parts of the string and what you have to consider for what you're using to make those strings.
Okay, so your first consideration is your length of your string. And as with anything, I'm a big proponent of the manufacturer's guidelines. So the manufacturer will tell you sort of the length that's best for your bow. So sort of use that as your start point. And then you've got your number of strands, and that can vary between materials. So I use at the moment a string type called 8125G.
Same.
I think that's the current one. That's like the main one that people use on the market. Yeah, I think Ducky's got the green version there. I've done an example string on here, and it's just using some orange stuff I used to use, which was caught by a company called Browning, and it was called Excel. And this was on the market, and I was saying to Jay before we got online that I have an amusing anecdote.
Go on.
So Fast Flight, which is this stuff, which is what we all used 20 plus years ago, because it didn't stress. Fast Flight's made from Kevlar. And
Yep.
in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when we all went to war, the archery industry couldn't get.
And I'm
Kevlar,
hoping
so
you
they
can
wanted to
still
make
see me.
body armor out of it.
I know we got one viewer there at the moment.
So they
I'm just hoping that this is just a momentary lapse in the. I think we're coming back in. Right, so it's just, sorry, it looks like we got my internet glitch at that moment where you're saying that traditionally they used Kevlar. Why did we stop using Kevlar?
So they stopped using Kevlar because we all went to war and needed body armor, and the Brits and the US took up all the military took up all the stocks of Kevlar. So the archery companies had to start looking at other things. So we went on to this Excel stuff that's something called Vectran and HMPE. We've now started introducing Kevlar back.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. I'm hoping that you can see me. I've got a stuck screen here.
You're good, Jay. Go ahead, Jenny.
And I'm just hoping that we do have one viewer there. If you are one of our wizards, please drop us a comment, because I can see those live. And we're back in again. You got to love the fact that here I am living in a marina and the Wi-Fi is being joyous to us at the moment. Okay, so is that your actual full rig set you've got there, Jenny?
Yeah, so
I
I
don't know
use
I'm still there.
It's called a Sherwood jig, and you can extend it to whatever length you want, and then it's got adjustable things, so you can make your string and twist it, which I can show you later. They're about 40 quid, 50 quid. So setting up, making your own strings isn't a cheap affair, because you've got to buy your jig, buy your string making material, buy your serving tool. But once you've bought all that, you're good to go, and you can make as many strings as you want, to be honest.
I think that'll be a good time for 1 second, because you just said about buying your jig and what. If I give you the screen 1 second, do you want to show us the jig that you've made and how that actually works?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to back up a second here for everybody to be able to see this, of course. So mine is not adjustable for length as far as being able to travel with it. However, it is adjustable for length because I've designed it so that I can adjust the motion and movement of my ends where my strings will go around. I basically built this jig out of electric support super strut. It's a 1 5/8 by 1 5/8 super strut. You'll find it at any home improvement store. This is what they use to support electrical conduit. So it's just basically a C channel, and then inside that C channel, you go ahead and get yourself. These are called super strut spring nuts. All right, and they're available in 3/8, 1/4, and 1/2 inch diameter threading. It'll come with a coiled spring on it. You just cut that off. Buy your bolt. You want a good 6 inch by 3/8 inch bolt. Some extra nuts to go ahead and secure it. And what you do is you go ahead and set that down into the channel. Make sure that the if you can see this here, there's little. I'll take it off. That there's these little groove marks inside on the sides of them, and you'll get those inside that C channel.
See ya.
And then all you do is just tighten the thread down, so that way it maintains its position inside a section of C channel. Also picked up some handles, male thread, the super strut spring-loaded clamps underneath of that as well as some industrial heavy-duty washers, so that it doesn't just crush into the channel. And then this will actually rotate. Now the kicker part about it is that these hardened aluminum bars are not commercially purchased. You actually have to go to someone that has a metal shop or whatever and get hardened aluminum. Drill out 1/4 inch holes, tap and die with a 3/8 inch 16 thread for the bolt to set into it. So I can get it in the right, there we go. And then voila, you have a completely mobile section that you can go from all the way out to 6 foot plus, because once you turn your end, you're out past 6 foot, as far as all the way as small as you want. I can do crossbow strings. I can do compound strings, recurve strings, longbow strings. It's not as cute as yours, Jenny.
Yeah, I went for the color.
Whereas I have space. Space is my friend. So when I can do something like this for about $60 US, and have the flexibility to do as big or as small as I want, then that's really where my head's at. And besides, my daddy always told me, a real man, if he doesn't have a tool, can make his own tool.
Yeah, whereas I'm a girl and I just like buying things.
What's that?
I'm a girl, I just like buying things.
No, that's true. I like buying things too, which is why sometimes I have to make a fair amount of things, because I can't always afford everything I want.
So yeah, so I think we've lost Jay. So I think it's the Ducky and Jenny show now.
All right.
Hopefully his internet will drop back in and he can join us again.
I've been a victim of his internet on that yacht. It's questionable.
It is. I think he's having a bit of a tough time on the high seas at the moment.
I'm a big fan of the 8125 like you are. It's
I'm trying to get the guys back on stream. I had a complete break.
I'm back in.
Yep, I'm back in.
Ducky's back in.
Just the joy of sharing internet in a marina doesn't really care at the
So I
moment.
love the 8125 I use as well, because of the high
I'm
wax
looking-
content
I'm
that
looking at
comes on the
everybody
string
and they're not
already.
moving at the moment. It's correct.
Yes, I've recently I sort of lost confidence in making my own strings, and I was buying some from a guy over in the UK, a guy called Sonny, who makes these podium-based strings.
Yeah.
And I've had to wax them a lot more than I've had to wax the 8125.
Yeah, 8125 out the box is just really good and waxy string. Once you run leather across it and get it to bind together, it's not coming apart. I mean, you've got a very good solid 18 strand for a recurve.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go back to making my own, not because I think there's anything wrong with Sonny's strings. I think they're brilliant. I think I just like the flexibility of being able to try different things, and like you say, Ducky, getting it to stick together and not having to wax it as much.
Lamb.
Just a random one to ask you, Jenny. Now I've just bought a new pair of limbs. I've tuned my bow up, but when I was actually coming to set my brace, I was finding it really difficult with my new limbs to actually bring it to my brace height, because now I'm wondering if my string, even though it's a 70-inch bow and I've bought the appropriate string, trying to keep it to the to the lower end, really didn't want to play. So I'm really fine-tuned. Would that be a situation where either my limb bolts aren't sitting in properly, which I don't think it is? Is that a moment where I should be going, right, somebody make me a string that's just that little bit longer?
I think certainly it used to be when they made a bow, you could buy and make a bow, and then you'd always have, I need a string that's 158 or whatever the length is. Now, because of the geometry they use, each type of limb has got a slightly different geometry. So it can just be that they've made the limbs a slightly different curve from what your previous set were.
Yeah.
And that's when you just have to play about with your string length.
Because I've taken so many twists out of it, it almost looks vertical striping. I mean, it looks like I've only got about 3 or 4 twists in the string I'm currently shooting.
Okay, so yeah, to caveat that what Jenny was saying, as far as the different manufacturers, I can say for 100% certainty. When I broke my win-win limb in UK when I was visiting you, when I got back, I borrowed a pair of Hoyt Grand Prix from my coach. Well, the Hoyt Grand Prix actually required me to put 2 extra inches into the string length because of the manufacturing differences. They're both 70-inch bows, but because of the geometry, you had to get an extra 2 inches was to the string, because I built a 70-inch string at 72 inches, and it was not enough. It actually had too much tension on the string and the limbs, and you could tell because like what you were saying, where's the windings were almost vertical. It was more of it wasn't like a barber pole. It was more of a straight up run. So we built a second string, and you have to keep that in mind based on the manufacturer. And as these technologies advance, they may require more or less to get that right brace height.
Another random one for the pair of you, because you've been making and shooting your own strings. Whenever I've been, remembering I only picked up what was it? The January. The first time I started shooting recurve was January 2018. So obviously at that time I had an Aldi center aisle bow. I mean, my entire bow setup I think it was about 160 quid. The bear bow I was shooting. Then when I went to get my proper bow that I ended up going to Warrior with, and the strings I bought subsequently, because obviously 37-foot yacht, there's no way that I'm going to be able to have a jig that's going to be able to make strings for me. So I tend to buy them, or mates could make them for me. One of the things in each one of the archery shops I've been to, they've been talking about they've been pre-tensioned, so they don't need to get shot in. They will be stable. Now, I've never been 100% sure if that's true. Strings you make yourself, do you have to shoot them in for them to have a stable length?
It depends. I think you were breaking up a bit, Jay, but I think what you're saying is, do you have to shoot strings in?
Yeah, to get a stable length.
When I make a string, when I make a string, what I do on my jig is once I've wound the string round individually, I stretch it again just to even out any tension, and then I make my string, and I bind my serving on really tight, and then I just sit it on my bow with some twists in for about 24 hours.
Yep.
And then I shoot it. Just checking the bracing height before and after I've done that. I think any string needs a bit of settling in, because you're going to twist it, and you're going to twist it by hand, and then obviously when it comes under tension, those twists are going to become tighter. I think used to be, when we used things like Dacron and even the Fast Flight, they needed to stretch, whereas now a lot of the materials we use now don't need to stretch so much. You should have minimum settling. If you've got a lot, maybe question how your string was made.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the number of times I've had to say to novices in my club how necessary it is to put your string savers on the end of your string to maintain your brace height, because you don't realize it just by sticking chucking into your bag, unless you've kept your two ends together, you can't guarantee that you still got the same number of turns in it.
Put it back onto your bow, you're going to have to ensure that your brace height and your losing my mind now. Hold on one second.
Yeah, not a problem. It's not unusual, because for once it's Hawk not actually barking here. Jenny, how easy would you say? Well, how easy / realistic is it for our WISards to end up making their own strings?
I think it's perfectly reasonable if you can tie a knot, which I like to think we've all done in basic training. You can make a bow string. It just takes a little bit of patience, and just be prepared for your first 2 or 3 to be garbage. And
Yeah.
it's having
Ducky violently agreeing.
if someone can sit with you and show you how to do it, brilliant. And I think there's different ways of making strings, and I know the way I make strings is slightly different from I know how Matt Neve makes a string. And it's just finding a way that suits you. If you've done fly tying, you can make a string. I know there's quite a lot of fishermen in our group. And it, like I say, if you can tie a knot and you've got some patience, you can make a bowstring. It's not that difficult.
We were hoping that Kev's going to be able to join us tonight. I hope you're well, Kev. But he was saying to me yesterday when we were having a chat about strings, he was there saying, this is something you can learn and you can end up paying forward and paying back into the community, because he was recommending that every club should have somebody that can make strings. So why couldn't you be that member? Because he was saying to me how mindful it is to be able to. I'm a crazy lunatic that does crochet. Ducky got bored of me over Christmas because I was crocheting a hat and scarf for his missus. But that's one thing that I can actually sit here on the boat and do. It's a very mindful activity. But you're saying it's a nice mindful activity for people like us, and maybe you could be doing it for your club and actually paying back into the community. I mean, do you find it mindful, Ducky?
Oh, it is a meditative type of activity because it is somewhat repetitive. There are individual steps and stages. Getting your string count. I don't tie any knots when I build my strings. I do a process that brings the string excess back underneath the serving, which creates a tension knot underneath the serving. So when I'm doing it, especially when I'm running my bear paw with the serving on it, it's just paying attention and feeling your way through the process and making sure that everything feels right and looks right as you're moving along. So it gets you very much into a trance of what you're doing in the moment.
See, I've only ever seen that piece of serving on. When Sonny started making his, I used to work with him at the Royal Navy Sailing Centre.
Right.
He mechanical, and his was the servings and either end of the string. That was fascinating. But that's so your servings and your string ends are all done by hand, the same sort of tool as we use for making our center servings if you ever have to replace them. Yeah.
Yep, I use this for my servings and for my my end servings. So.
And same for you, Jenny. You've got a manual device for it.
Oh, I've lost you, Jay. You've dropped down.
He was asking if you have a manual. Yep, a manual serving tool.
If you do the same thing as Ducky for putting on your servings and loop ends.
So I use Cavalier tool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hang on, I've got to get the camera angle right. There we go. Yeah. Now, Cavalier made this. I bought this about 20 years ago. They're really difficult to get hold of now. I think Avalon make a similar one. The brilliant thing about this, you can get it really, really tight. You can also get, which is the one I've got here as an example, is a biter serving tool. Oh, hang on. Ooh, yep. There we go. And that's got some holes. It's slightly different.
Yeah.
You can't get it quite as tight as with the Cavalier. The reason I use the Cavalier is because I can get it really tight, and I use on my serving something called Angel, which is it's very different, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this on the camera. So you've got the two different. So that's Angel stuff that I use, and then you've got braided nylon, which isn't quite as tough. You can get it in a lot more colours. It's slightly thinner than the Angel stuff, but you can't get it as tight, and it's not as durable as this. This is
so glad
the price.
So glad you mentioned colours there, because I've helped people buy their recurve bow sets, and when they come to get their string, they're going, "Oh, it's got to be this color," and I've had to turn around to them, going, "What about your sight picture?" Because you've got to make sure that, yeah, whilst the string is such a gorgeous looking thing to look at, you've still got to make sure that you can see the colors of your string in your sight picture. If it's going to blur into the background or blur into your riser or what have you, you still need to select colors that are going to work for your sight picture. I mean, I imagine one of the worst things you could have is a pure black string.
Yeah, so strings used to come in black or white. We generally went for black because they didn't show the dirt. Now you can get them on all sorts of colours. So I've got a stripy one here that's pink and yellow. I tend to go for lighter colours because you can see them. So when I'm making my own strings, I use this yellow because you can see it. And it's just so then you can make sure you can see your string. So the colour is better to be a real contrast to your bow so that you can see it when you're aiming. That's my view. I don't know what Ducky thinks on that.
Well, as far as sight picture and color contrast and all that, I don't. Maybe I'm not as experienced enough an archer. I'm still working on the basics, but I don't always. No matter how bright the string is or in contrast to my bow, I don't hardly ever see the string itself in my sight picture. I focus more on my anchor and nose alignment every time and adjust my sight as necessary. So when I'm making strings, for me, it's all just a matter of personal preference in color, what I like to see when it's sitting on its stand. Um, so I make serious, like, and I like
you
green.
just want to make
I
sure
like,
Abigail's the name of his bow. You just want to make sure that Abigail looks pretty, don't you?
yeah, she's got to look good, when she's sitting there waiting to be shot. So,
okay, then.
yeah, even the servings come in a ton of different colors nowadays.
Well,
I mean, we found this nice purple for my center serving. That was pretty cool. I was telling if you can see the color there.
Ooh, engineer's color as well. I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Right, I might be asking Kat to build me one. So we've only half an hour. Give me just run me through mistakes that you've made and what you've learned from those mistakes. So start off with you then, Ducky. I mean, you're pretty much the newer one to making these things. What was the common mistake that you were making on making your first strings?
Well, first string, I have a tendency to try and get my string very, very tight on the jig, which can actually lead to problems with you making the turn to put on your top and bottom serving. I actually have had to just cut a whole set of string off before because I've had it too tight on the jig. I couldn't work with it. So start over there. And then the other thing is initially I was forgetting to put the twists in the string before I put my center serving on. So I had one straight just strand of string.
Right, and by the time you put your serving over the top of it, it's never going to have the flexibility to actually turn inside of it.
Yeah, you might as well just go out and get a stick off of a tree and tie a string on either end of it.
Jenny?
I don't put my center serving on until I've got it on my bow, so I only do the end loops and the end serving on the jig. I'll then twist it up and then I'll put my center serving on once it's on the bow. And I use a very short center serving. It's literally gives me enough space to put my top finger on, my bottom fingers on, and then an inch and a half below. And that's just to save weight, so it's faster.
Yeah.
The more serving you put on, the longer you're serving at the end loops and in your center serving, the more weight it adds to your string, therefore the slower it is. When you're shooting the higher poundages, so I'm shooting nearly 40 pounds, that's not really an issue. But when you're at the lower poundages, and you're just starting out trying to get those full distances, that makes a lot of difference. So the shorter you can keep your serving, the better, really.
Well, I've certainly learned a huge amount, and I'm now almost for once, I almost regret living on a boat. I wish I had a bit more space so I could actually start making strings here myself, but I know plenty of you that make them, so I'm going to end because I've suddenly realized, oh, I now know so much more of what I'd like to be able to put into what I would want out of my string now compared to what I've currently got. Folks, thank you so much for that. We've been on online, although with breaks for the last 30 minutes. I think that's more than enough of them staring at this shaven mug, but your two delightful faces. I'm so glad that we've actually managed to get, there's international in the middle of Wizard International Archery, so we've actually got archers both sides of the pond. I'm so chuffed with that. And I suppose the final thing to say is everybody look after yourself. But as long as we're following the directions that we're being given, stay home, wash those hands, socially distance, look after yourself. I've second time round in an epidemic for me, huzzah! So we can make it through this second one. Folks, thank you so much for your time. And to the rest of the wizards out there, if you've got ideas or you'd like to be part of an interview, please let me know. It's a nice way for us to see some faces. This is the first time I've spoken to human beings today. I think I'm starting to get worried to be back. But thank you all so much, and hopefully you're seeing the end of this video. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, folks. You guys say your goodbyes. Cheers, folks. Thank you so much again.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.